Well, welcome everybody to this new way of doing Sundays together. This is completely new territory for us, the first time we're doing it, so we don't know what we're doing yet, and thank you for your patience with us as we figure this out together. I want to just start by praying as we get into this time together, so pray with me if you will. Father, we thank you that you are always with us wherever we are, that you never leave us, that whether we are gathered together in the same room or we are scattered into different homes, that you're with us, your presence goes with us, and you can do your work amongst us in that place. We want to ask, Father, that today as we sit together in different places, that you would work through us, that you would speak to us, you would help us to see what is happening in this world and how we can be involved in your work. Amen. Well, you might be at home watching this by yourself, but one of the main things that we want to make sure happens during this time is that we stay connected with one another. And I'd encourage you, if you are on your own at the moment watching this, that you can find a time to connect with somebody else to discuss some of the things that we're going to be speaking about this morning. You might do that online through a streaming program. Or you might call somebody up after you've watched this, or maybe you have someone on the phone at the same time. Others of you will be meeting with some others, and just encourage you to think of creative ways to keep those connections going. We're not going to be running a normal Sunday gathering on this stream. What we want to do is we want to help to facilitate the discipleship wherever you are, whether that's online or in person with other people. If you are with other people, you might spend time in your gathering worshipping together, singing some songs. I hope you would spend some time praying with one another. You could spend some time reading scriptures. And hopefully what we offer to you this morning will be a help to facilitate some of your reflection and some of your discussion. Well, right now we are in the middle of a series, this is interrupting, but we're going to continue that series through to Easter. And the series we've been looking at is this series of Behold. And we've been looking at John, the Gospel writer's behold through his gospel, where he's calling us to pay attention to something, to see something that he wants to point out to us that God might be calling us to see as well. And we have a booklet which is going to come up on screen for you. You can download this booklet. There's a QR code there. All you need to do is point your phone camera at the screen and you'll be able to download that booklet. If you'd like to follow along with what we're doing, there's a page there where you could write notes, or it could just be a prompt for you to think about things. And this is where we're going to start today, just thinking about beholding, thinking about what is happening in the world at the moment and what this is doing to those around us in our community, and how we can both see what is happening and see what God might have us do in this situation. So I've got John to talk about this because he's got better ideas than me on this. And I want us to think about how we can see this as an opportunity to connect with those outside our community. And maybe before we get to that, we need to think about what is the immediate effect on the way that we gather as church community now.
Obviously, coronavirus has a significant and complex effect across our whole society, and we're part of that. So maybe just to mention 4 immediate changes for us. First one, and obviously the one you're experiencing now, is that we're not going to gather together on Sunday mornings as we have been doing. That will cease immediately until the government says that it's fine for groups to gather in larger numbers. In place of that, what we want to do is provide you with some resources, some material that you can use in small groups, in your families, or just on your own at home, that will hopefully help you continue to follow, love and serve Jesus as part of our church family. So that's going to be in multiple languages. We'll have some content for kids as well. If you have ideas or input, we're going to be gathering all sorts of stuff together. It will probably look quite different from a regular Sunday. We want to use this as an opportunity maybe to try different things. So if you want to give us feedback or have something that you think might be useful, we're going to experiment and put a package of stuff together. The easiest way for you to access that will be on the website. That's where you'll just go and click. We'll have it up each Sunday, some new content from Sunday morning available. You can watch it then or later in the week. So that's the first big change, Sundays. Second thing is perhaps more at the moment than ever, it's really important that we do what we can to stay connected with each other. Now that's going to be difficult when we can't always be meeting face to face. We do want our life groups and our prayer groups to continue, but how they do that might be flexible. Some groups will want to keep meeting in homes or other places because they're a small number, and for them it seems appropriate practicing all the hygiene stuff as well, but that's okay for the moment. For others, it's more, it's wiser just to do that online. But we really encourage you to keep connected with people. And if you're aware of others in our church family that aren't in a regular gathering like that, now is the time to invite them and say, why don't you join us online or at this home, so that we do stay connected with each other. It's probably going to be quite a while before we can get life back to normal. So it would be very easily for people to get lost and just wander off. We don't want that to happen. We don't want to be overlooking people's needs, and so we want to be responding to them. So if you are alert to things that are happening in people's life, please pass that information on. Third one, obviously most of our midweek ministries have already concluded. There are a few exceptions to that. Alpha will continue. They're in the middle of a series at the moment, and so they'll keep meeting. We may well run another Alpha soon after that. It's really important that we don't stop the gospel spreading, even as we try and contain the virus spreading. So Alpha will be one ministry that we want to keep running if we can. Another one is Foot Fellowship. They'll be outside. It's a less dangerous situation for them, and the leaders of that group have thought, at least for the moment, that they want to continue. Same with Lift. It will be running as a small group on Thursday mornings. The other key ministry that will continue is Friday Night Youth Group. The government at the moment is saying that they want kids to be at school, that schools are going to continue after the school holidays. We don't think that there's a huge additional risk for the young people that come along. Obviously, if they have people in their families that they're worried about spreading the virus to, they'll make choices that's suitable for them. And the last thing is how we sustain the life of the church together. Many of you at the moment will already give to the church online. If you haven't done that, the details are on the screen now, and you can use those to commence your online giving. I just want to thank you for your ongoing support. We're also anticipating that the economy is going to be difficult in months ahead, so we want to do what we can as we're able to resource the life of the church. So they're four key areas that are changing for us.
I guess as these changes take place, they do affect us immediately, but they also maybe change the way that we think about church and what that gathering means. What do you see in terms of what that could do for us?
Yeah, it's quite interesting that I guess we're worried that this is a threat to the life of the church, that this could kill us off. But if we think differently, if we behold in a different way, we might see that really this is an opportunity for us to grow in different ways than we might otherwise. If you look at the book of Acts, for example, the early followers of Jesus were pushed out of the synagogues and had to meet in homes. And so home and church life really became one as they met in those smaller groups. And that's our experience at the moment. And then as persecution increased, they had to get out of their homes and go to new places. But ironically, the thing that they worried would kill off the movement of those following Jesus was the means by which it spread. It went to the four corners of the Roman Empire, the known world at that time. Why did that happen? It was because the people took the gospel with them. Local, individual, normal Christian followers shared their faith in their new neighbourhoods as they connected with people, as they set up life in new places. And maybe that's what we want to think of as a group of people. How can we use this change to our lifestyle as a way to connect with people we live alongside? How can we engage our neighbours? How can we use our time creatively? You're not going to be sitting in church on Sunday morning. How are you going to use that time? Maybe that is one opportunity in the week that you have to do something different with the person that lives next door or around the corner. go on a picnic, just catch up for a meal. Small groups, keep it safe, but try and do this in a thoughtful way. It might be that you simply ask them a question: how are they going? How are they finding things? Are there worries or troubles or concerns that they have? And this might be the means that we respond to those people in love.
Are there particular ways that you think that we as a church can help the needy at this time? And who are those people?
For some people, this is incredibly frightening, and we know that anxiety and fear can take on a life of its own. And so to give support, to give care, to be good listeners, I think is really essential. For others, it's just simple practical problems. And it might be that we can together try and support people as they negotiate this change of their lifestyle. You might think, well, I can see the problem, I don't know the solution. I would say you don't try and work it out on your own. Talk to others in your small group or talk to us and see if we can come up with something that's helpful together. This is how the body functions. It's not just that all of us have to do everything, but together we can respond and help people in need.
Yeah, and so we want to do that now. We are going to have, we've got 3 sections that we're going through. This is the end of the first section. And at the end of each of these sections, we're going to have some questions on the screen that you can reflect on your own if you're on your own, or encourage you to reflect with other people. If you're in a small group at the moment, then spend some time, pause this, have those 2 questions there, and spend some time discussing practically what this could look like for you. So we're going to spend that time doing that now, and when you're ready to continue, you can unpause, and we'll move on to our next section. Well, hopefully you had a chance to think and to chat about creative ways that you can help people in the wider community. The second thing we want to talk about is for us to create creative learning environments in this new season that we're in, and to think about this with us, I've got Russell, our new youth and families pastor, here to chat with us. The reality is that we are a learning community, that we are learning together to follow Jesus. This is what we are about, and learning how to express the love of Jesus to the wider community. And I think we need to think about this together in a new model of church, at least in this season, how we continue to do that. One of the areas we want to chat about that and think about is with our families and how we do that for our children. And I think also more broadly, we want to think about that, how we do that with our whole community. And so Russell you just started last Sunday as our youth and families pastor, and we interviewed you last Sunday at services, but some people might not know you. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what you see as you come to be part of the community at Gordon Baptist?
Thanks, Steve. The most important thing to know is that I am married to a great wife, Linda, have 6 children who are all married and practicing Christians, and 10 grandchildren, with 1 on the way in May. So that'll make that number 11. And you can deduce from that I love kids and really enjoy kids. With regards to the vision for children's and youth ministry, I'm very impressed with this book that's called Growing Young, and I think that's the vision for all churches. If they want to retain young people and engage them so that they follow Christ, we've got to grow young. We've got to be people who are investing in the next generation, in children and youth, as the future leaders and ministers of our church.
That's cool, I love that. Now, you've come into a very interesting time to be part of the community. You haven't even really got to be part of all our normal children and youth activities. What do you see these changes meaning for us in terms of our children and youth programs at Gordon Baptist at the moment?
Great question, and they are strange times. I think the amazing thing about children's ministry and youth ministry is that as far as God is concerned, it's parents, families, they are the primary children's ministers or youth ministers in a Christian community. So although there's a coronavirus and church meetings are stopping, that never stops. And what is great is this is an opportunity for parents and even grandparents to really raise an awareness amongst children and youth that God has given them that special privilege and role of doing everyday Christian discipleship in the home and in other contexts outside a church building. One of the great verses that has guided my own investing in our children as they were very young until they became teenagers was Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 5 to 7, where God says, it gives those great commandments. You're to love me with your heart, your soul, and your strength. And then he goes on to say that you're to have these commands on your heart as adults. And then you now have a responsibility, he goes on to say, to impress them on your children. And adds to that this is to happen every day. It doesn't happen in a building or just on one occasion on a Sunday morning. You're to do this, he says, as you sit at home, that could be around the meal table, at dinner, breakfast time, or at the in the living room as you're watching a movie. You're to talk about these great commands that I'm giving to you, God says. And then he says, or when you're walking along the way, you could be walking down the park to the park or to the shopping centre or driving. He says, keep talking about me and about my great commands and instructions for everyday life when you lie down, when you get up in the morning, so that kids begin to realize that parents are sincere and engaged with Christianity, with following Christ every day in all of life. And this, therefore, means that Sunday morning, when you would normally go to church and sit in a building and the kids go off to creche or to, kids club or kids church, now's the time actually for parents to say, actually, we are pastors in our home. We are spiritual leaders and carers, and we're going to set the pattern for the rest of the week. We're going to use Sunday morning, gather together as a family or maybe with another family, and we're going to set the attitude and the approach for the whole week by using this time. And I think it really will make kids aware that my dad, my mum, or even if it's a single parent, that they really are interested in me and my spiritual development.
Amazing ideas. I love the ideas, but for some of us that are parents, that can be quite intimidating, because I imagine for some it's like we don't know how to do that. That's why we come to church on a Sunday, because we want our kids to grow up in that environment, and so we want to bring them to a program to do that. But if you're saying it's the parents' responsibility to do that, I guess a key question in this, and you've had experience in this yourself, but how? Like, what does that look like? How do we learn that? What does it mean for us to disciple our children?
I think that's a great question, and I think you've made a great point that for many parents, that can sound overwhelming, and really think like, oh, I don't have the ability or the skill to do that. I really need someone who's trained to do that. But kids love parents who love God. Kids enjoy parents who enjoy God. So the first most important part of doing this with your children is to be natural. It's who you are, and it's about your faith and your enjoyment and your experience of God that you're sharing. And secondly, even from that verse, it's all about taking natural occurring things that happen in the home and talking about them as Christians, what it means to you, just noticing and observing things. But in addition to that, of course, we can all do that better, and we do need resources, and there's so many resources, great resources that are available, and they're free and they're online. So what we're going to do is we've already put up on the website some resources that you can just click on the link and go to that website, and it'll give you lots of ideas, lots of materials, even videos that you can play, songs that you can sing together, give you some really constructive ideas as to what to do. And it doesn't have to go for a long time. It can be for a short period together, but there's so many ideas. We've just tried to limit it to a few of them that we think are the best. But we'll develop that each week, and we'll give more tips and more ideas. So we'll certainly be supporting you all the way through this period.
That's great. So I think the reality is that we need to work creatively on this to think about how to do it. We have actually done it in this format ourselves before, and as a community we're going to think about how to do this. And I think even more broadly than families as well, it's us thinking in terms of a whole community. How do we be this creative learning community? And I guess I want to encourage you from your place at home or with your groups to be looking for ways that you see God working, for stories that you're collecting to share with our wider community. And we want to, when we put this together each week, share those stories with the wider community as well. And so you could send stories that you have in via email, give us a call to share the story. We want to think about how we can keep our community informed about what's happening and to share resources together. So please do that. We're going to give you a chance now to reflect on that, to think in a group what stories have done and creative ways of approaching ministry or discipleship you can think of together now that we may be able to use in the future. Great. Well, welcome back. Hopefully you had a chance to discuss with other people some creative ways or sharing some stories about how we might be able to facilitate learning in the community at this time. And I wonder, before we go on, was there a story that you thought of or a story that was shared that you need to write down and send in to us that we can incorporate into our learning as a whole community as we move forward in this way? Well, in this final section, I want to share a thought with you. And the main desire that I have for the community at the moment is to remain connected. To remain connected with one another in community, and that might look different at the moment when we need to be wise and stay isolated, but doesn't mean that we can't keep connection. And I want us to think about how we do this, and I want to read a piece of scripture and to reflect on this together. We are in this current Behold series, beholding what God is doing as we lead up to looking at Jesus' work on the cross and in his resurrection at Easter. And if you've been following the series and if you look at the booklet for today, it's a really interesting verse that comes up today as we look at the Behold. Today we're reading from John chapter 16, verses 32 and 33. Listen to these words for today. Behold, the hour is coming, indeed it has come, when you will be scattered, each to his own home, and will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, for the Father is with me. I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. What an interesting verse for us to land on this week. The hour is coming when you will be scattered, each one of you, to your own homes. I don't think I could have chosen a verse that described more what happened. That's why we're meeting differently today, because we have all been scattered to our own homes. The context of what Jesus is saying here is he's speaking to his disciples, his closest followers, and they've come to a point in their understanding when finally they've grasped who Jesus is and what he is all about. And he's said to them, I've come from the Father and I'll be soon returning to the Father. He's kind of predicting the fact that he is not going to be with them physically for a lot longer. And this verse comes straight after. Jesus said, this is what's going to happen. And they go, oh, we understand. We understand what you're about. And they profess this faith. They profess the fact that finally they understand what Jesus is about, that he comes from God, who he is. And I want to encourage you in this time to not do what Jesus says will happen to these disciples at the end of this verse. At the end of this verse, he said, each will be scattered to his own home. And this line, and you will leave me alone. And this is my encouragement to you, stay connected. Do not pull back in such a way that you are left on your own. And the reality is, for each of us, an initial profession of faith in Jesus will be inadequate for us unless we move to a place of full discipleship, of a place where we are learning all of life from Jesus in every season that we find ourselves in every situation that we find ourselves in. If you have been someone that you come to church on a Sunday and you come in order to be fed or to do the Christian thing, then I'm afraid that might be inadequate for the season that we're in. And I want to encourage you, go deeper, to lean in, to work out what this faith means for your life Monday through to Saturday and Sunday now, meeting in a different way. Now is not the time to retreat and to pull back from community. Now is the time to lean in and advance and work out how what your relationship with God looks like in a new season. We've been scattered to our own homes. And now is a time for us to think about what is God calling for us to do. And I guess the question is how? How do we do that? Like how do we advance? How do we lean in? How do we develop community in this way? And I want you to share those creative learning ideas with us as a community. But I think there's one key thing that I want you to take from this passage today, and that is to develop practices like meditation and like prayer that will keep you grounded in this time. The reality is that if you, instead of using these practices of meditation and prayer, you begin to feed on coronavirus media, the conspiracy theories out there about what's happening, if you meditate on worst case scenarios, then this will do the opposite to what needs to happen. It will produce reactive panic, or it will incite and develop fears within you. And that is not God's heart for you. God's heart is that you would have peace, that you would know his presence with you. And the best way for you to do that is to develop these practices of prayer. I think that's best done with other people. Yes, do it individually. I want you to develop those practices on your own, but what if at this time you think about what that means for you to pray over a Skype link, or to pray with someone over the phone, or to go for a walk and to stand at a safe distance as you're walking and pray with one another as you do that. This whole section of teaching in John chapter 16 is Jesus teaching his disciples about prayer. Let me read it to you. This whole section, this is the Message version, Eugene Peterson's translation. Jesus says, "This is what I want you to do," from 16 verse 23. "Ask the Father for whatever is in keeping with the things I've revealed to you. Ask in my name, according to my will, and he'll most certainly give it to you. Your joy will be a river overflowing its banks." This is where joy comes. This is where joy overcomes fear. When you ask God what is according to his will, his desires in this world. Jesus says, "I've used figures of speech in telling you these things. Soon I'll drop the figures and tell you about the Father in plain language." And here, "Then you can make your requests directly to him in relation to this life I've revealed to you." Jesus says, "I won't continue making requests to the Father on your behalf. I won't need to, because you've gone out on a limb, committing yourselves to love and to trust in me, believing I came directly from the Father who loves you directly. First, I left the Father and arrived in the world. Now I leave the world and travel to the Father." Jesus is saying that you don't need somebody else to mediate your faith, your relationship with God, that he has given you everything you need in order to relate with God directly. And so we need to get into the practice of doing this. And the disciples reply to him and say, "Finally, you've given it to us in straight, plain talk. No more figures of speech. Now we know that you know everything. It all comes together in you. You won't have to put up with our questions anymore. We are convinced you came from God." So they hear Jesus saying this, and then we go, we can see who you are. We're convinced. We have faith. And Jesus answered them, "Do you finally believe? In fact, you're about to make a run for it, saving your own skins and abandoning me." And Jesus says this, "But I'm not abandoned, the Father is with me. And so if you feel abandoned at the moment, if you feel alone, if you feel isolated, if you feel scared, if you feel lonely, then I want you to know that we are, as a community, want to be with you and to support you. And so you need to reach out and tell us how we can support you or connect with somebody. We will do our best to try to stay connected. And we want your help with that. But you can also know that God is with you, that the Father is with you, that he is waiting for you. Spend time learning to speak those fears or those prayers that you have to him. Express them to him. I want to encourage you to pray in this time. It starts with speaking to God about how you're feeling. Are you afraid? Start by telling God that you feel afraid. Are you frustrated? Start there. Start by saying that you're frustrated. Are you feeling overwhelmed? Start by expressing to God, I feel overwhelmed. Are you hopeful? Start there. And then I'd encourage you, once you can express what's happening with you, to use this time to begin to pray for others. Who is it that God is leading you to pray for? Who is he bringing to mind that needs your support and your practical help at the moment? Pray for the medical professions and the care workers at this time. And so we ask, Father, show us how we can practically support them. Pray for those who are already lonely and the anxiety of this idea of being isolated brings greater anxiety for them. Father, we pray that they would experience peace. Pray for people who may lose their jobs at this time, for people who have incredible pressure put on them because they work in casual work or they work in profession where there isn't this kind of security that full-time workers have. Pray for small business owners. Pray for people who live week to week and will have no income if this continues to escalate. Father, we ask that you will give them hope in this time and you will give them today what they need for today. Pray for those for whom isolation with their family is actually a terrifying and a threatening idea. Father, we pray that you would deliver those people from evil and that they would be bold to speak out and to find safe places at this time. And pray for yourself, pray for courage, pray for wisdom, pray for strength, pray for opportunity for the gospel at this time to spread, for people to see that Jesus is what he is all about, the values that he brings to life, the life that he gives because of who he is. And pray that you will see ways and find ways to express his love to others at this time. Father, as we are scattered and we retreat to our homes, let us not leave you or one another alone, for we know that you have not left us. Be with us and move amongst us in power. Just as Jesus says, yet I am not alone, for the Father is with me. Thank you that we can say the same. And at the end of this passage, Jesus says to his disciples, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. That in Jesus you may have peace. He says, in the world you'll have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. We love you as a leadership team here at Gordon Baptist, and as a community, I want to thank you for the way that you are thinking about how we care for one another in this time. And thank you for your support in thinking about how we can do church in a different way. We are going to come to a close of this time now, but we're going to have one final question come up on the screen for you to discuss about together. You might have other things that you have in mind that you'd prefer to do, and so don't feel like this is limiting on you. But I'd encourage you to spend some time to have a final discussion with other people around you, and make sure that you spend time now praying. Pray for some of those things in your heart. Turn your attention to God. Turn your trust to him. And I guess balance. what you have been reading, what you've been hearing, what other people are saying, with spending time listening to God and hearing what His heart is at this time for us as a community. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to continue to do these presentations, to go out each Sunday to try to help to facilitate how we do this as a community. Bless you. May God's strength be with you. We are here for you. Let's continue to work this out together.